Welcome to the Wisery Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wadler, founder of the Wisery, and this is our weekly Wise in 5, where we ask Fortune 1000 business leaders and esteemed professors 5 questions to provide insights to help grow your business and career. I am honored to host this week's guest, Jim Lefevere, for this week's Wise in 5. Jim has been a transformative leader in the pharma and healthcare space, most of which at Roche, where he spent over 24 years leading global digital commercialization and SaaS platform strategy across over 30 international markets. I know you'll enjoy Jim's wisdom and perspectives that he has used to successfully drive product innovation, commercialization, and marketing for both Fortune 500 and mid-market businesses. Hi, Jim. Fantastic to see you.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you, Jason.
My pleasure. And I love the background. I mean, you're doing the colors today, so you are all in, and I appreciate that.
All purple today.
You're all purple, all Wisery. Before we dive into our Wise in 5, I would love for you to share your amazing background for the folks that are watching and listening.
Sure. So graduated from IU, mid-90s. Always knew that I wanted to kind of move into marketing. Started out, went into publishing. That was obviously around the time of the internet. The first go-round of the internet started to take off. And so then I always having a little bit of a bent towards technology. I started to work through a couple of startups locally in Indianapolis area. And then that led me ultimately to working at Roche. And I stayed at Roche for 24 years in progressive commercial leadership roles, primarily in global functions, ultimately having responsibility for digital marketing in the diabetes care business globally. Moved into a role around innovation. And so that gave me opportunity to work with a lot of startups and helping take assets that Roche had and pairing that with assets from startups and the idea that 1 + 1 could potentially become 3, and really being able to kind of take those product bundles and then testing them in health systems and learning the process of what health systems are looking for and how to get kind of new products out into the market. And then finally worked in a product development role leading all the digital components and support of a continuous glucose monitoring product that launched in September of 2024. Ultimately decided to leave Roche in October of 24. And since then have been consulting, really kind of bundling up all the experience that I collected over those 24 years working globally and in marketing roles to help startups and smaller organizations, find commercial clarity, help them, whether they're launching a new product, they have a product in the market and need kind of a fresh perspective, they're scaling and need to view things a little bit different for scale. And that's where I step in and help companies, ultimately with the goal of helping them find that clarity and stepping out and helping and, letting them run that.
Yeah, that's great. Amazing background. And I got to say, I don't think there's a hotter space right now than the med tech, health tech space and everything that's happening with it. I mean, GLP-1 is a thing, right? I've seen people talk about GLP-1 as a bigger thing than AI. It's going to have a more dramatic impact on society than AI possibly could, which hard to believe. And we're going to talk about AI and how this is all fitting in. And something I want to mention, we have a roundtable coming up with you and 2 other incredible product leaders in the regulated space that I encourage everyone to take a look at. Go to wisery.com and take a look at that. Can you go through in our first question and just share, where do you find inspiration in daily life? It's something I ask everyone who joins me on this podcast.
Yeah. Wow, what a huge question. So inspiration, I think part of it is growing up, and my mom was a nurse, primarily in kind of nursing homes and, that kind of setting. And then my dad was actually a funeral director. And so they were kind of involved in these different spectrums of care. So
Vertically integrated.
Yeah, taking care of people or, providing care to people and loved ones, at the end of life. And so as I think about that question of inspiration, I mean, I always kind of go back to the roots in my childhood. And I think that's where a lot of it kind of fomented, so to speak. And I never really, when I was in school or, the earlier parts of my career, I never really thought about it that deeply. But, as you get longer into your career and you have the opportunity to kind of reflect and look back, I really think that had a huge impact ultimately on kind of how my career has unfolded. And what I have found through the course of my career and, specifically being at Roche, is that being close to a patient And even if you're in a marketing function or you're not directly delivering care to a patient, I think working in a organization that is specifically creating, developing, and bringing products to the market to help people is very impactful. And certainly has had a very large impact on my career overall and kind of how I view it and how I think I view it going forward. Because there's nowhere else that I would rather be. And it's a quick aside. In my career at Roche, I did literally a very quick kind of boomerang out for literally 3 months, and I went to work for a industrial products company like door closures and hinges and not sexy or exciting stuff. And literally very quickly realized like that was a very bad decision. Luckily, Roche took me back, and so reinforced for me the value and the importance of really being able to provide care for a product that helps people.
Well, I think that's just a terrific answer, and I think that it just drives off of your childhood experiences and seeing your parents do that. It's just pretty incredible. And obviously, having that 3-month kinda kick in the head, you realized your passion and your purpose and that you were what you're following. So,
Yeah.
very fortunate because not a lot of people get to do that. So, I think that's wonderful. So, I mentioned AI before, and, with this next question, I'd like to get your perspective. Where do you see AI adding the most value in diagnostics product development, which you worked on, whether it's going through discovery or clinical validation or commercialization, as you mentioned. Where do you see that having the most value and impact?
I think, at least in my experience, I think the easiest answer is to think about it from a discovery perspective because it can help, if you really, I worked in more of a safe kind of agile environment and was there when that was implemented. And, really from an enterprise, large enterprise perspective, that is kind of the first step into working in an agile way. And the first thought is that, well, AI makes discovery so much easier. You can determine the job to be done. You can test it. You can create synthetic personas and really get a good idea up front of whether or not the feature, the thing that you're building is of interest and could work. So that's the easy answer. I think the better answer, though, is downstream that it can help really validate what you're building more into the market before you get into the market. And that is really kind of one of the weak spots in that I think in large kind of product development is the validation part. So you think you have a good idea, you build it, you think people will love it, but then put it in the market and you wait for people to love it. If you can
Mhm.
validate that before it gets into the market, I think you're going to be better off from a pure product development perspective and an adoption perspective. And that's where I think it can have the most impactful difference for development teams if they
Yep.
build that into their process overall.
Well, that makes total sense. It actually plays into my next question, which is how has AI kind of shifted the balance then between it's kind of engineers versus marketers or technical and non-technical folks, right? How does it affect that balance, the way that products get built, as you were just referencing?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting because in my career, there's always been the people, and ultimately, if you have the ability to kind of be a bridge, that kind of the technical person that can also speak business, or the business person that can also speak technical, you have a pretty rare gift and skill set, and those people are always pretty much in high demand, regardless of industry or where you go. So with that in mind, I think it can help both sides. I don't know that it has an advantage for one or the other because
Hmm.
the engineer can become more business savvy and the business person can become more technically savvy. And I think it just can create and foster better dialogue, better work together, and ultimately a better feature or product in the end. But it does require that people uh, adopt, embrace AI to the extent that they can within their team and workflow so that they can understand that job to be done. They can understand who feels the pain, what evidence matters in terms of proving that feature. You know, all of those things I think are improved through the use of AI.
Yep, agreed. And you've gone through, as I've gone through, digital transformations, right? Only from the early days of the internet. After our days at IU is when it really started to kick in. But I'm curious, as you've led these major transformation efforts at your 24 years at Roche, how do you see adoption now, this whole AI adoption? How do you see it differently from previous technologies that you you managed and drove through the organization?
Much differently in that when I led transformations and, kind of more tech stacks and changing how people worked, it was more or less a kind of a stakeholder buy-in, efficiency play, trying to drive more efficiency and effectiveness ultimately to 30 plus countries around the world. And the business case for that is much easier to develop. Like if we switch from this platform to this other platform, it'll be better for the users and we may save money, we may spend a little bit more money, but we'll be able to, send 10,000 emails much easier. So much easier to get approved. AI, completely different animal in that you have to get the buy-in from the end users. So before you would just say, "Hey, we're going to do this," you get buy-in, and then you train them on it. Right? There wasn't a ton of pushback necessarily. Some countries may delay or what have you, but here, I think with AI, you really have to spend a lot more time upfront, really kind of getting people bought in to the idea, bought into the value, bought into why it's important. Because if you don't, they're not going to use it. They have to understand the value and what they're going to get from it. And I think one thing that I talk about a lot on LinkedIn or elsewhere is that really people are hesitant, and healthcare is, slow adopter of technology by and large. People are very hesitant to introduce a thing that they think could take their job. And
Yep.
so you have to demystify it. You have to, I think, really emphasize the human in the loop, the value of human judgment, how AI can be a force multiplier, what that means, how it can help them, but and stand by it from an integrity perspective, say that it's not going to take your job, right?
Hmm.
I think people have to really kind of draw the line in the sand that, we're not bringing in AI to take jobs. We're bringing it in so that the organization can be more effective. So it requires change management. It requires evaluating workflows. It requires training. It requires kind
Hmm.
of a whole, reevaluation of the operating model within that commercial function.
Yep. Well, and I think it's great perspective. I think sometimes I'll speak broadly. It's hard for people to believe that when they see what's happening around them, when
Right.
there's these mass layoffs and whatnot. So, it becomes a trust factor to say, one, I'm going to believe you as an organization that you're doing this and you have high interest at heart, maybe not my best interest, but you're taking into consideration what I can do. But I think it also is then incumbent on individuals to learn this and test it and try it and also work with people like you, like the Wisery, to help guide them through it, right? So that they can feel comfortable with it. Something that I've felt early days of the internet, because people really didn't know if the internet was going to take off, that things would be outsourced.
Yeah.
And so companies would start by saying, we don't know if we should really invest in this, in people and our process internally, so I'm going to outsource it. And that took like 2 or 3 years to get through that phase. I think with AI, it has been so compressed and primarily to the point that you made, Jim, which is people are concerned that if they don't know this, they're going to lose their job. I don't think people felt that with the internet. Maybe if you were a travel agent, you had that concern.
Right.
But now I think it's a much broader concern that people have that I heard it said if you work in a job where you're using a screen, that's where you have the highest likelihood of being disrupted soon.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And it's to me, it's also indicative of whether or not people have kind of a growth mindset. Are you
Mhm.
willing to learn? Like, you don't have to become an expert. Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to adapt? Are you willing to kind of learn something new? I think the majority of people have to be more in a lean forward willingness to kind of learn new technology. And that doesn't mean that you have to go all in and start being a creating prompts or skills or whatever the case, agents on your own
Right,
within
right.
Claude, but you got to be somewhat fluent in it. And that to me, that's just be a part of being in a career, right?
That's
You
right.
you have to stay on top. If you're whatever the case might be, sales, operations, you kind of always have to stay on top of what's happening to be an effective employee. And in this case, it's AI, and it's
Mhm.
moving pretty quickly. And I would encourage everybody to at least take a class, kind of learn the basics, at least be dangerous enough that you can talk about it and use it in your day to day work when asked to.
Completely agree. And it's funny because I think we've talked about where I teach at IU at our alma mater, and I'm teaching entrepreneurship. And obviously, AI has been a huge discussion with the students. And whenever we talk about it or I bring in speakers from the outside, it keeps going back to like no one knows exactly what's happening with AI. You got to, get in the game, but it's about your critical thinking. It's about your curiosity. It's about your ability to collaborate. Like those types of skills are what's important. And I've even heard people say, what? It's the liberal arts students that may have the better shot than even some of the business students, who are learning a specific skill versus I'm learning a way to think and to tell stories and to communicate.
Yeah, so I have a daughter that's at a smaller liberal arts college in Indiana, and they are it's a great way to describe it because that is kind of what they're teaching and how they're teaching it is critical thinking and how to ask better questions to get better answers, and that certainly applies to AI. And I
Mhm,
always like to tell people that are new to it is, whatever, like pick a topic that you're interested in learning about, and then ask it to teach it to you as if you're fifth or sixth grade, whatever the case might be. But then because you are an adult and you have human experience, ask it a contrarian question or a question that will force it to think a little bit differently. And that's the power and get that answer. That's the power of what AI can do for you in the simplest of terms and how you can see, you get an answer, but then you're applying your human knowledge to it and how it will, in the best case scenario, it will stop and say, good to challenge me on that and it'll provide you a different answer and maybe one that is more aligned to kind of what you know and
mhm.
understand. And that's kind of the value and the benefit of having AI being a force multiplier and helping you in your job and whatever that is.
Yep, I think that's very smart. So I'm going to get back into our questions, and we're actually almost done with them, Jim. And you're flying through them. And I think it gets into actually what we just were talking about. But how do you build a team culture that embraces these tools, these AI tools, without losing the human judgment that matters so much in the healthcare space?
Yeah. So one thing that I'm passionate about and always like to talk about is if you're a leader and you are implementing AI in your organization or whatever the case might be, your department, I think you have to, within kind of those boundaries, I think you have to think about a couple of things. One is, do you want to establish a manifesto of sorts for how AI is going to be used within that group, team,
Hmm.
whatever. So, what do you believe? And that's a way for everybody to kind of get together, and it can be a part of the change management process as well of people voicing their concerns, their worries, and creating kind of a shared understanding of what AI can be for that particular situation. I also think you need to emphasize human in the loop. So AI is a force multiplier, it's an assistant, it's an aid, it's not a replacement. And being clear about kind of what that means in that practical situation, that it does not kind of take away human judgment and human thinking. And ultimately, it allows people to become more empowered about how they use it versus less empowered and becoming cynical ultimately about kind of that use of it, and then establishing the ground rules for how it's going to be used going forward.
Hmm.
So, and each
Kind of a
workflow,
governance.
governance, workflows, how it's going to be used, what data it's going, if you're using kind of just Gen AI and large language models, what's the review process going to be for that so that it's just, you're not fully blindly trusting the output of it, but that it will go through a human process of review and utilization. Or if you're creating a specific LLM for that organization, kind of where's the human in the workflow to review
Hmm.
the results of that. And I think that's where, you can implement it, but implement it smartly and implement it in a way that is a benefit and not a threat to organizations and teams and groups that are, in an organization and need to learn how to use it effectively.
I could not agree more vehemently in terms of what you just shared. I mean, as you know, having been an advisor in the Wisery, we have a saying which is AI plus AI equals AI, which is our advisor insights plus artificial intelligence give you actual intelligence. And the technology around AI is still nascent. And there's a lot of hallucinations. As you had mentioned before, in your personal experience, it may take you down paths that may not be right. And you need someone who's been there. You need the wisdom of that experience and that critical thinking and judgment to guide not just the prompts and the inputs, but to make sure that what you're getting back is right and actually can be utilized. So I'm in complete agreement with you. So we went through all of our questions, Jim.
Wow,
You
that's
passed with
amazing.
flying colors, but I have one more. I have a bonus question. So when folks want to engage with you on the Wisery, what are you best positioned to help business leaders and their companies answer when they engage with you?
So thank you. My career has been interesting because I have actually been involved in kind of all aspects of marketing. So I was involved specifically in diabetes care, and that has, from a healthcare perspective, that has elements of direct to consumer. So been involved in direct to consumer campaigns, but it also has significant B2B aspect of it. So been involved in B2B, and it also has a B2B2C component. And so, long way of saying that I've seen kind of and been involved in all aspects of marketing, primarily focused now on B2B or B2B2C, and helping companies that are revenue positive, are ready to launch a product up through Series B and profitable and large, help them evaluate and find commercial clarity. As companies grow, you're launching your first product, really need to find your ideal customer profile. Who is the buyer? You need to understand them very deeply. You need to understand their pain points, the job to be done, kind of messaging architecture, unique value proposition, content to reach them, the best avenues to reach them. And so I help companies find and create all of that and then execute it as well. Companies that are a little bit larger, they may have grown and kind of hit the ceiling in terms of growth, and they might be going upstream and trying to find, uh, more revenue. They might be trying to find another buyer that's higher up on the buying scale. They might be trying to increase price, and I help them kind of transition from what got them to really good to help them get to great as well. And all focus med tech, health tech, digital health, a little bit in biotech and pharma. Definitely had exposure to that through Roche and understand it. And part of that is also helping them navigate, all the things that come with that, regulatory pilots and health systems, all of those types of things.
Great. Well, I'm so excited for people to engage with you. I'm very excited about the roundtable that is going to be coming up in the next couple weeks. And if folks can't join us for the roundtable, you can always go to wisery.com and get access to it. And it's about product development in the age of AI, which we touched on quite a bit here today. But you, along with Regis, who helped build Rocket Mortgage from the start, and Parrish, who built Fidelity's whole CX and UX and their product suite. I think we have three amazing people, three amazing leaders that are going to come and provide some great perspective. So thank you for all of it, Jim. This was a wonderful conversation, and I wish you a wonderful 4th of July holiday
Thank you.
and a great cruise.
Oh, thank you. Yes, likewise. Looking forward to a little bit of vacation here in the next week or so, and definitely looking forward to the upcoming podcast. I think it'll be a great conversation with everybody that have kind of similar backgrounds, and it'll be a lively discussion, I'm sure.
I agree. I agree. Thanks. All the best, Jim.
Thank you.
See you
Appreciate
soon.
it. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Wise in 5. Visit thewisery.com to learn more about Jim and book time with him or any one of our acclaimed advisors. Only at the Wisery.